Somewhere in the Australian outback, there are entire towns where people never see the sun unless they choose to. Not bunkers, not tourist attractions. Real towns with homes, bars, churches and schools, all built underground. They exist for one reason. Above ground, the temperature can kill you, so people went below it. Not all of these towns are still alive. This is the story of the strangest places anyone has ever chosen to live. In 1915, deep in the South Australian outback, a 14-year-old named Willie Hutchison wandered away from his father's gold prospecting camp. What he found glittering in the red dirt was not gold, but opal, stones so bright it seemed to hold its own sunrise. News of the strike spread fast. The first official mention appeared in a June 1915 Adelaide newspaper, describing a fairly large white opal found at 8 Mile. Soon men began arriving from all directions, drawn by the promise of fortune beneath the scorched earth. The early camps were nothing more than canvas tents pitched against a landscape where midday heat could turn metal tools too hot to touch. By 1917, the miners realised that survival meant more than luck. The war in Europe had ended, and ex-servicemen, many of them skilled in trench warfare, drifted into the new opal field. They brought with them a different way of thinking about shelter. Instead of fighting the desert, they dug into it, carving homes into the soft sandstone hills. Council records from 1917 and 1919 show the first permits for these dugout houses, with trench diggers like Jack Norton leading the way. The name for this improbable settlement came from a miner who had worked the fields at White Cliffs. He suggested coober pedy, a phrase from the local Aboriginal language, often translated as white fella's hole. In the summer, temperatures above ground could climb past 40 degrees Celsius with no shade for miles, but inside the earth the rock stayed cool and steady. The dugouts were not a novelty, not a whim. They were a blueprint for staying alive. By the close of the decade, the first real community had taken root, one shaped by the raw necessity of the desert and the skills of men who had dug for survival in another world. This was not the story of a mining camp that faded when the rush was over. Coober Pedy began as a place where the ground itself became both shelter and promise, and where going underground was the only way to stay. Inside a Coober Pedy dugout, the world feels different, quiet, steady, and surprisingly cool. The air hovers at 23 degrees Celsius no matter how the outback sun scorches the surface above. Here, a family gathers for breakfast at a kitchen table carved from the same sandstone that shields them. There is no need for air conditioning or thick curtains. The temperature barely shifts, even during a summer of 45 degrees. A 2019 field study measured the annual average at just over 23 degrees Celsius, with only a single degree of variation between seasons. In these underground homes, comfort is not a luxury, but a necessity engineered straight into the walls. The dugouts themselves come in all shapes and sizes. Some are simple, with 2 or 3 rooms branching off a central corridor. Others sprawl beneath the hill in a maze of bedrooms, storage alcoves, and even private galleries for opal displays. The largest registered residence stretches over 450 square metres, more than enough for an extended family, with space left over for a workshop and a collection of mining trophies. Corridors double as ventilation shafts, drawing in fresh air and keeping carbon dioxide low. Solar-powered lights illuminate the rock, casting a soft glow on the rippled ceilings. In many homes, wall niches display polished stones, family photos or keepsakes from distant countries. Life below ground is not isolated. At the civic heart of Coober Pedy, the Serbian Orthodox Church stands as a testament to both faith and craftsmanship. Carved entirely out of sandstone, its arched nave and icon-lined walls are the work of volunteers, many of them migrants who arrived with little more than a suitcase. The church is more than a place of worship. It is a gathering point for a community that speaks dozens of languages. Coober Pedy School, perched near the entrance to the dugout district, enrolls children from 49 cultural backgrounds. Lessons echo in English, Greek, Serbian, and Arabic. For many, the classroom is their first experience of life above ground. In this town, the underground is not a retreat from the world, but the foundation of daily life. Families celebrate birthdays in sandstone kitchens, neighbours share recipes and stories through tunnel walls, and every child learns to tell time by the angle of sunlight filtering through a vent. Coober pedy's dugouts are more than shelter. They are proof that, even in the harshest place, people can build not just houses, but a home. Above ground, coober pedy looks like a mirage, flat earth, dust, and a scattering of metal signs warning of danger. Below, the town takes on a stranger life. Here, spectacle and survival blend in ways that outsiders rarely expect. Take the golf course. There is no grass, no fairways, just a rocky expanse where players tee off from squares of carpet, carrying their own patch of turf from hole to hole. The local club rules say if your ball lands in a mine shaft, it is a penalty stroke. On paper, it sounds like a joke, but it has been a fixture for decades, even hosting tournaments under the stars to escape the heat. Moon Plain, just outside town, stretches out in pale ripples. Its cracked surface has doubled as the surface of Mars, the Moon, and post-apocalyptic wastelands in films like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome and Pitch Black. Production crews come for the otherworldly look, but the locals know it as the edge of their backyard, a place where the wind can strip paint from a car in a single summer. Eccentricity has always found a home here. Crocodile Harry, a Latvian-born crocodile hunter, arrived in the 1970s and carved out a dugout filled with bones, graffiti, and odd souvenirs. His underground lair became a legend, attracting travellers, artists, and film scouts. Stories of Harry, half truth, half myth, still echo in the tunnels. For a while, his home even appeared in movies, cementing his status as the town's unofficial mascot of the bizarre. Yet beneath the oddities, there is a constant reminder of the risks. The council's latest safety plan maps out more than 45,000 documented mine shafts within the town's footprint. Some are capped, but many remain open, hidden by weeds or a thin crust of dirt. Falling in can be fatal, and every local knows someone who has had a close call. Water, too, is a daily worry. Drawn from deep underground, it arrives at a cost, $5.80 per kilolitre, the highest municipal rate in South Australia. For many, the monthly bill stings more than the desert sun. Coober pedy's spectacle is never just for show. For every quirky tradition or underground oddity, there is a hidden price. The town's survival depends on constant vigilance against thirst, against accident, against the slow creep of the desert reclaiming its own. Even wonder comes with a warning sign. White Cliffs began as a rumour on the wind, a story of colour flashing in the stone, carried by kangaroo hunters in the late 1880s. By 1887, newspapers in New South Wales reported a new opal field at White Cliffs, discovered by a man named Miller from Broken Hill. Word spread, and soon prospectors and their families crossed the stony hills, chasing fortune into a place where the sun could blister skin in minutes and water was worth more than gold. The first camps at White Cliffs were little more than canvas and hope. Surface living meant waking to the sound of flies and falling asleep to the ache of dehydration. By 1894, the Mining Gazette recorded the opening of the first underground opal shaft. Miners, scorched by the outback, began to dig sideways as well as down, carving rooms into the ancient sandstone. The rock here, over 100 million years old, was soft enough for picks, but strong enough to hold its shape. In the summer, the air inside a dugout felt like a promise, cool, dry, and safe from the violence of the sun. Life underground was never just a novelty at White Cliffs. It was a matter of survival. The Pioneer Children's Cemetery, a patch of pale stones at the edge of town, tells that story in silence. Graves of children lost to typhoid and fever in the 1890s serve as a reminder that the desert did not forgive mistakes. For every opal found, there was a price paid in sweat, health, or worse. The town's population swelled to nearly 5,000 during the 1902 boom, but the heat and the hardship thinned their ranks just as quickly. Today, only about 100 dugout homes remain. their walls bearing the marks of generations. The White Cliffs Underground Motel, with its 48 rooms tunnelled into the hillside, stands as the world's largest of its kind. A warren of corridors where travellers sleep beneath metres of stone. There is a quiet pride in the way locals talk about their homes. No collapse has ever claimed a life here, a century-long record that is spoken of with the same reverence as the opal itself. White Cliffs has always been a place of firsts. In 1981, Australia's first solar power station was built just outside town, a circle of mirrored dishes tracking the sun, harnessing the same force that once drove people below ground. Stories linger in the dust. Cricketer Bill O'Reilly, born here in 1905, the son of the first school teacher. Opalized fossils of ancient sea reptiles pulled from the mines, linking the present to a vanished world. But the heart of White Cliffs is not in its oddities or artifacts. It is in the stubbornness of those who stayed, who learned to live not despite the desert but with it, carving out a home where the surface could not sustain them. Lightning Ridge sits at the edge of the New South Wales outback, where the rules of geology and human behaviour both seem to bend. Black opal, the rarest and most valuable opal on Earth, is the town's secret currency. In the late 1980s, a single carat of Lightning Ridge black opal could fetch more than a diamond, and even now the right stone can command 6 figures at auction. The rush for these gems drew not just fortune seekers, but inventors, artists, and the kind of characters who thrive on the edge of the possible. The story of Lightning Ridge is inseparable from its legends. In 1908, Charlie Nettleton walked 700 kilometres from White Cliffs, driven by rumours of a new kind of opal, one so dark it seemed to trap all the colours of the desert dusk. Nettleton's trek became a rite of passage. He returned the next year to start mining, and his journey is still recounted in local pubs, a reminder that the outback rewards only the most determined. Underground, the town's eccentric streak finds full expression. The Chambers of the Black Hand is no ordinary mine. Sculptor Ron Canlin spent years carving the sandstone walls into a labyrinth of figures. Pirates, pharaohs, pop culture icons, and even a full-sized samurai. Visitors descend by ladder into a space that feels more like a dream than a mine. Half art gallery, half time capsule. All born from the same rock that hides the opal's seams. The chambers are not just a tourist stop, they are a testament to the urge to create beauty in a place shaped by hardship and chance. Science too finds its place in the ridge's underworld. In 2019, paleontologists announced the discovery of Fostoria dimbangunmal, a dinosaur fossil preserved in opal, the most complete opalized dinosaur ever found. Its bones shimmer with the same play of colour that made Lightning Ridge famous. Fossil hunters and miners now share the tunnels, each chasing a different kind of treasure. Above ground, a different kind of oddity awaits, the bore baths. Artesian water, heated to 40 degrees Celsius by the earth itself, bubbles up into open pools. Locals and travellers soak under the stars, their laughter echoing across the flat, open plain. The baths are both a luxury and a necessity, a place where the heat of the day finally gives way to the cool of the night. In Lightning Ridge, the line between necessity and invention grows thin. The black opal market, the epic treks, the carved chambers, the fossil finds, and the midnight baths all speak to a town that refuses to be ordinary. Here, the underground is not just a refuge from the sun, but a canvas for imagination, science, and the stubborn joy of living differently. A thunderstorm in 1930 swept over the low hills near Andamuka, leaving behind flashes of colour in the wet clay. Within weeks, the advertiser reported the first opal finds, and a handful of men staked claims on ground that, until then, had barely registered on any map. The depression hit hard. Miners and their families dug into the hillsides, carving rough dugouts in the hope that opal might offer a way out. Most days there was little to show for the effort, but dust and exhaustion. Yet in 1954, the discovery of a single stone changed everything, the Queen's opal, a 200-carat gem that would be cut and presented to Queen Elizabeth II. For a moment, Andamuka's name travelled as far as London. The town never grew large. By the 1970s, Andamuka had slipped into a kind of limbo. The main street was a dry creek bed lined with shacks patched from scrap iron and driftwood. Police came by once a week from Woomera, more out of habit than necessity. Oral histories from this era describe a place where the mail might arrive by camel, and where the only real certainty was the heat. The dugouts, some little more than caves, offered relief from the sun but little else. Population counts hovered around 300, but on some days it felt like fewer. The opening of the Olympic Dam mine in the 1980s brought a pulse of new life. Roads improved, trucks replaced camels, and a few families moved into surface houses. Yet the old dugouts remained, silent markers of a town that had nearly vanished. In Andamuka, resilience is measured not in growth, but in endurance, the stubborn will to stay when the world seems to have moved on. Mintabee's story ends not with slow decline, but with the force of law. In 1980, the South Australian government carved out a 4-square-kilometre lease on Anangu Pitjantjatjara Yankunitjatjara land, creating a legal anomaly, an opal town inside Aboriginal freehold territory. For decades, Mintabee operated on a patchwork of permissions and uneasy truces. The Mintabee Opal mining lease, registered as LTMP0217, gave miners a foothold, but ultimate authority rested with the APY Executive Board. Tensions simmered over land rights, policing, and the town's role as a supply route for alcohol and drugs into dry Aboriginal communities. In 2018, an independent review commissioned by the South Australian government found the arrangement unsustainable. The report tabled in Parliament in 2020 described Mintabee as a gateway for illicit substances and called for the town's closure. The government responded with the Mintabee Closure Act of 2021, setting a hard deadline. Every resident, shop and home had to be gone by December 31st, 2022. Demolition crews arrived as summer temperatures climbed past 40 degrees. By January 2023, the last houses were bulldozed and the land was handed back to the APY traditional owners. Official inspection records from April confirmed that Mintabee was uninhabitable, its dugouts sealed, its streets erased. Court documents show that residents fought the eviction until the end, filing appeals and seeking injunctions, but the law held. For the first time, an Australian underground town was not abandoned by slow neglect, but erased by government order. Mintabee's fate stands as a stark reminder. In the outback, even the deepest dugout cannot outlast the reach of policy and the politics of land. Underground, life endures where others walk away. In 2024, less than 1,800 people still call Coober Pedy home. Proof that survival here is never guaranteed, only chosen. As climate extremes push more of the world to its limits, these towns stand as a stark reminder. Resilience isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet defiance beneath the earth. What would you risk to keep your home alive?